Hi, I'm Richard from Geminus, and today I'm going to be talking you through how to use our R&D cost calculator. Now, if you're watching this video, the likelihood is you've had some correspondence with Geminus already. You've got a good understanding of the type of stuff that you can claim. We'll talk you through that anyway. And all you need to know is how to fill in this information prior to your claim meeting. So the spreadsheet serves two purposes. Firstly, it helps you prepare the data in a format we need to make the claim meeting as quick and as efficient as possible. It actually has quite a few purposes, to be honest. The second purpose is to allow you to identify projects and activities that you may want to discuss with us to find out if we think they're eligible or not. And thirdly, it gives some good evidence to HMRC about the type of work that you're doing that we would normally attach to your claim report as an appendix. So if HMRC did ever pick your claim to have a look at, they'd be able to have a good look through, see what you're doing, and that may negate the need for a visit. So there are 10 pages to the spreadsheet. It's very, very simple spreadsheet stuff, very, very simple Excel stuff. We do have a corresponding book, which is called something along the lines of completing your data with our R&D cost calculator. If you want a copy of that, please do contact us. Otherwise, I will fire away. The one thing I will say is this YouTube video does add a little bit extra on subcontract revenue, which is a very, very important point for your claim. I'm guessing that'll happen about 5 minutes in, but you should see where it is by looking at the tabs here at the bottom of the page. And when we get to that one, that's where that key information comes in. So onto the summary. The first page, by the way, just tells you a little bit about what it is, what the cost calculator is, what it's for, and what boxes you need to complete. So moving on to the summary, normally this page will be totally empty. What I mean by that is these will all say div by 0 and this will have nothing in it. The reason there's some data there at the moment is because I've filled in some provisional costs just to help speed up this spreadsheet, this video a little bit. All we need to do at this period, at this time, is enter the dates of your accounting period in the top box here. So for the sake of this example, I've put in April 2017 to March 2018. That is all you need to do. You now move on to your projects. And this page helps us collect a little bit about what your projects are and the type of information that HMR like to see to demonstrate some sort of eligibility, as we call it, the 3 key questions. So I'll work through the example I've given now. Firstly, we give our activity or project a short reference title. We do try and keep that as short as possible because it copies it into some smaller boxes on other sheets that I'll show you. So if you put a long title in, you'll get some horrible text wrapping or overlapping going on that we don't really want to see. So nice short title that describes the or as a reference for the activity or the project. We then, in a sentence or so, describe what the technical challenge is. So here I've said we need to know that the material blocked the required frequency but didn't affect the transmission. Something quite simple, quite straightforward, that gives the reader a feel for what is happening. So it's really answering the first question, is there a technical challenge? The second question, why is it a technical challenge? Well, I say here, many shielding devices block a high range of frequencies. We need something that only blocks a very narrow range, which does not currently exist. Simple sentence on what the technical challenge is. And thirdly, the third key question, in a sentence explain why another technical specialist couldn't solve the problem easily and with information currently available. And we've put simply because the solution hasn't been developed, nothing exists, we're developing something new. The last question isn't really relevant because R&D tax credits are eligible whether you're successful or not. This is a nice ending to the story for the reader, so in a sentence describe the outcome. So what we said here is we were able to develop a fabric based on something from a different industry, which perfectly achieved our aims. And please excuse the typo on the word different. I did type this in quite quickly earlier on. So once we've filled in all of our activities, and we've left space here for 10 activities, you can have more if you want. You don't have to fill in all 10, do as many as is relevant. You can then move on to the next stage, which is your staff costs. By the way, if you're unsure about the eligibility of any of your activities, write them in. Give us a call and send us a copy because we will tell you straight away whether we think it's eligible or not and have a discussion with you as to what we think your options are. So moving on to the next sheet, staff costs. This is the most complicated sheet here, so don't feel too overwhelmed by it. It is actually extremely simple. Now, when I asked you to give a short title, that's because you'll see here, material test. That title has been copied across from the last sheet. So across here, you'll have a list of all of your projects that you're claiming for, or hoping to claim for. Now the first step, and that stands for all of these sheets, is to enter your total costs in this box. So this sheet's about staff costs, so we need to enter our total staff salary costs for the given time period in that box. It doesn't matter if that's not exact. That can be an estimate because it doesn't really have an impact on the final calculations. It just allows us to work in percentages, so that doesn't have to be precise, just as accurate as you can possibly be. And then here you can start to fill in some information about the people. So I put two people in, Richard and Helen. I've said Richard worked 20% on the project, Helen worked 40%. Normally, if there's more than one project, we'll fill these in all the way across. And this is where you've got to be very, very clever and careful with your guesstimates, because that's what they are. If you've got timesheets and you can substantiate that 20% clearly, absolutely fantastic, super. But not many people have that sort of level of information. So you need to be putting figures in these boxes that you could easily defend in a discussion with HMRC. It may be the case that you have timesheets for the other work, and this is sort of spare time, so to speak. It may be that you can look at the work that's been done and you've got a series of emails, a series of project plans, some sort of Gantt chart, something that would allow me to justify the rationale behind me putting 20% in that box would be good. But it can be a guesstimate or assumption. I use those words very carefully, but based on some sort of reasonable fact. So this box here just sums up all of the percentages. So it tells 20% of my time has been on relevant R&D projects. I enter the salary, so I put 35k in here for the sake of argument, and it calculates what my eligible claimable salary actually is. So we'll do this for all of our people. We'll have a series of people, a series of projects, a series of times, a series of salaries, and it will start to sum up our eligible expenditure for salaries. So once that's complete, we then move on to subcontract costs, and it gets very, very simple from here on. So subcontract costs, here we are looking at work that we have subcontracted to other organisations. And in doing that, we must have specified what the technical problem actually is. And I'll go on to the reason for that on the next page, but that is very, very important. Okay, so I've put in the total subcontract cost here. I've put £50,000 for the sake of argument. I've put in the subcontractor, who we gave the work to, a little bit about what the work was, testing the shielding property of materials, how much we paid them, how much of that cost was attributed to eligible activities. So this assumes £15,000 was relevant to the R&D activities, £5,000 was for something else, and there we look at the eligible cost, which is calculated. Now you can see here, when we put in our subcontract costs and the eligible cost is calculated, in this box up here, it gives the percentage, and that's very, very important for what we need for our claim meeting. You will also find, simply for your reference, by here you get a copied list of the project titles that you can refer back to if you need to. So that's our subcontract costs. The next page is subcontract revenue. The important thing to remember here is the rules of R&D tax credits are very, very clear in that you can only claim contract work which you've done for large companies which have over 500 people, turnover over 100 million euros, or balance sheet over 86 million euros. Now, there is a condition here to be aware of, and I'm going to give you an example. You may have done subcontract work for someone else, but what you can claim depends upon specifically what you did for them. And that comes down to who defined the technical problem. I'm going to move this forward by the way of an example. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that we're developing a credit card which acts as a shield to shield your contactless cards. And that credit card comprises two pieces of plastic with a bit of fabric sandwiched in the middle. And for those of you who know me, you know this is actually a real life example. Now, if I was giving the problem to someone else and I said, make me a shielding device for contactless credit cards, and they came back and just did the work for me, then I can't claim that as R&D credits because I've not actually specified the technical challenge. we've got to be clear here. This is not black and white. This is very much a grey area, but these are the definitions that we use and HMRC are totally happy with. If, on the other hand, I'm being given the subcontract work, someone's asked me to make this shield, and I look at it and I think, well, okay, firstly, I need to work out how I'm going to glue the fabric in between these two bits of plastics. It needs a special adhesive. The fabric needs special properties. I need to test it to make sure the glue hasn't affected the properties of the fabric and so on. Then I, as the company receiving the work, am specifying the technical challenges. I'm retaining the IP for use further downstream, and that's very, very important as well. And that means I can actually claim that activity as a valid activity, because my client isn't subcontracting the R&D to me. They are wanting a finished item, some purchased cards, which are plastic with a bit of fabric in the middle. I encountered the technical challenges. I had to define the technical challenges and work out what those technical challenges were and how to address them myself. It wasn't specified by the client. So when it comes to subcontract, what I would say is if you've had to specify and address technical problems as a part of work you've done for someone else, then I would be claiming that as in-house R&D. Bearing that in mind, you might want to now go back to your projects page here and fill in a few extra activities that fit that criteria. So again, when it comes to subcontract, if you've done things for other people, look specifically at what they asked for. Did they purchase a finished item off you, or did they request you to do specific R&D where they define the technical problem? If they define the technical problem, it's their claim. If they don't define the technical problem, if you define it, it's your claim. Complicated area. Thank you for bearing with me on that. We'll now move on to the next section, externally provided workers. So I've assumed for the sake of example here there are no externally provided worker costs, but we would normally enter the total here, the name of the workers here, the titles here, the salary and the percentage attributed, and again that would come through and work back onto the main page. The next page is software. We enter our total and you can see the pattern here. We enter the name of the software package, the activity title, the total cost, and that could have been a one-off purchase cost as long as it was within the given financial period, or it could be the sum of a series of monthly payments, but either way you have to provide a percentage usage figure and then the eligible claim, as for the eligible cost is calculated. Materials, again, exactly the same. You enter your total amount here. For materials, consumables, you enter the title, the activity title, the total cost, the percentage usage, and everything else is calculated. That's the cost for that line item, that's the total cost, and that's the percentage, 28.3. Now onto the last page, grant funding. A little more complicated because you may not know all the data on there, but I will ask the question. You enter the grant title. If you've got a formal grant title, that's the best thing for us. Grant provider, you should know who provides you with that money. It might be Innovate UK, it might be your local council or Growth Hub or so on. But the more information you can give us there, the better. In this case, it was SBRI, Small Business Research Initiative. The next box is the one you're least likely to know, and that asks what type of money it was. Was it de minimis? Was it notifiable state aid? It should state that on your grant letter, but if you don't know, just put a known in. Send this to us before our grant meeting and we will find that out for you. This is a very, very important piece of information because this effectively dictates the amount of work within a project that's received grant funding that can be funded under certain specific rates. So we can go out and find that for you if you don't know yourself, so please just ask us the question. We then put the grant value paid in the period and the percentage usage attributed to the eligible activities. So in this case we had a £46,500 grant. It was all relevant to the projects we've claimed it. However, the company had a total of £64,000 worth of grant funding, meaning the amount attributed to relevant R&D is 72.7%. That is the spreadsheet done and dusted, finished. What I'm going to do now is go back to the summary sheet and show you what has happened. And of course you did see this at the start, normally it would have been empty, but this is what we need to see. So when we have our claim meeting, we will look at this sheet. We will look at the accounting period, we will then look at the total costs and the percentage spent on eligible activities. This does not tell you how much you can claim, and it doesn't tell you what your total eligible costs actually are. but it gives us everything we need to plug into the spreadsheet, and we plug it into our software. And when we plug it into our software, we will then be able to tell you what your eligible spend and potentially your claim will be. At that point, you can make your key decision on whether you want to proceed and purchase your report or not. So hope that's been useful. If you do have any questions whatsoever, then please contact us. You'll find our details on our website, geminustraining.com, and via any other correspondence that you've had. And we thoroughly look forward to speaking to you further. Thank you for your time.